I intervene here only because I want to respond to my friend from North Carolina, who I think starts with the incontrovertible point that it's wrong to prejudge whether this was murder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to respond briefly to this, that number one, I think it's unbelievably irresponsible to throw out words like murder to reach a conclusion before any further investigation is due. That's inflammatory, it's sensitive, it's unbelievably irresponsible. And my colleague mentioned that there was a tragedy in Minnesota, and I think that we're missing the tragedy. We have seen a governor, an AG, a mayor, local officials, top to bottom, encouraging citizens to violently protest federal authorities who are seeking to remove people who are here illegally. And specifically, people who are here illegally committing crimes. That's what's so outlandish to me. That's the tragedy here. You have elected officials who are leveraging their political capital to protect those who are here illegally. And of course, whenever anyone loses a life, it is a tragedy, but you cannot avoid the facts of this case. The officers approached the vehicle. They asked the woman to stop. They asked her to get out of the car. She did not comply. She hit the gas pedal. All of those were avoidable. Had she obeyed the instructions of law enforcement, there would have been a very different outcome. So to all who watch, when law enforcement approaches, especially if you're trying to obstruct their mission, obey. Don't hit the gas pedal, get out of the car. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time, but again, let me just reiterate, throwing out inflammatory rhetoric before there has been any conclusion drawn is unbelievably irresponsible, and it adds to an already inflamed situation, and I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to stop it.
And I hope that that my colleague, with his astute prosecutorial understanding, would just as much reprove the Attorney General and the President for going out and claiming this was self-defense without a complete investigation, especially when all the evidence of our senses would suggest, if we're going to jump to a conclusion, we should jump to a conclusion that this was murder and not self-defense. But that's why we have the law. That's why we have a legal process.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here. And what kind of person responds to a killing of an unarmed American mother by blaming the mayor, the attorney general, and the governor instead of answering whether a federal agent committed murder? That would be a Republican member of the House Judiciary Committee from none other than North Carolina.
The gentleman correctly states the situation, except he aborts the analysis midway. He says, well, she was told to stop, she was told not to go anywhere, but still she drove her car away. And I certainly saw that. The Supreme Court has a decision just on this point, which I'm sure the gentleman knows. It was decided in 1985. Everybody in criminal procedure learns it. Tennessee versus Garner, 1985, because Tennessee had a statute which said if there is someone fleeing the police, they can be shot. And the Supreme Court said that's not the rule. They can only be shot if they're fleeing the police if the police have probable cause to believe that the suspect poses a significant threat of death or danger to other people. Now, Ms. Good, who's a 37-year-old mom of a 6-year-old boy, now orphaned by ICE, posed no threat to anybody. At least, as far as we can tell, there's no suggestion that she posed a reasonable threat to anybody.
Congress is supposed to be a sacred civic space, not in a religious sense, but because it represents the struggle of ideas, the hard work of communication and compromise, and the promises made to the people who sent their representatives to Washington, D.C. Especially in dark moments, leaders are expected to rise above fear, to act in the interests of their districts, and to serve the common good. People don't send you to D.C. to rub elbows with billionaires, abandon democratic principles, or turn your back on the people that you represent. And yet that's exactly what we're watching. Talking points recycled, accountability dodged, and cruelty defended as policy. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens when politicians sell out their values and their constituents, trading integrity for power and loyalty to MAGA.
I think our committee should launch an investigation into this. This would be a worthwhile subject for us to get into at this point. But the idea that simply because she disobeyed an order that she can be shot in the face at point blank is wrong. That's not the law in the United States of America. And you know who knows that? Everybody on this side of the aisle who talks about Ashley Babbitt. Because everybody talking about Ashley Babbitt seems to think that, well, she was told repeatedly to turn around and to leave, and then she still tried to use violence to get into our chamber, into the speaker's lobby in order to get at us. And she was shot and repelled. And there were 2 different investigations which found that that was reasonable force used by the police because she was coming at them. But what we had in this case was this woman was trying to leave. She was trying to get away from it. She wasn't coming at the police. She was trying to get away from the police.
One of those contentious struggles occurred during a House Judiciary Committee hearing where Jamie Raskin absolutely tore into North Carolina's Brad Knott over his failure to see anything outside a pro-Trump, pro-ICE, pro-Elon Musk mindset. A mindset that isn't about law, justice, or accountability, but about power, and one that ultimately represents the oppression of the American people.
This is why we have a real legal investigation, and it is completely irresponsible for the president and the attorney general to be out there claiming against all evidence that this was self-defense. This is why we have law. Okay, then we should wait until we can make a final pronouncement upon that. But let's at least get down what the law is. This is the House Judiciary Committee. And people cannot be shot in the face simply because they walk away from a police officer. And especially when we've got police officers who are masked.
So what was Jamie Raskin ripping this guy a new one all about? It seemed like he was asking basic, relevant questions that matter to the American public. I mean, why are ICE agents wearing masks when other armed federal forces don't? Who made that decision? And why do they keep sticking to it after brutalizing American citizens? And why the hell won't anybody explain it? If Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and this entire damn administration really want transparency and to build trust, then why is anonymity being expanded and hyped up at the exact moment an ICE agent has just killed an American citizen? And why are we being told to ignore what we can see with our own damn eyes on video and instead accept speculative excuses about what an officer might have felt in that moment? Why are we not thinking about the victim here and how MAGA mouthpieces like Knott try to justify her killing? What about what her family is feeling and what everybody across America is feeling at this betrayal, this absolute betrayal of trust? And why is calling for accountability suddenly framed as inflammatory while floating narratives that justify lethal force isn't? Here's the storyline they don't want people to see. You start with the images of Minneapolis. One woman killed and another unarmed woman dragged from her car, windows smashed, seatbelt cut, terrorized by masked agents. And instead of accountability, what follows is immediate narrative control. She's smeared, minimized, recast as unstable, dangerous, disposable. The victim becomes the problem. Then the MAGA propaganda machine kicks in. On Fox News, border chief Bovino claims 90% of the public is happy to see them. Hannity nods along. Meanwhile, the actual public, the people watching the videos, reading the reports, seeing the violence, are furious. And we know it's made up because the receipts are right there. ICE spending millions of taxpayer dollars paying pro-ICE influencers to flood social media with curated propaganda, humanizing the agency while brutality is escalating in real time. This is message laundering. Donald Trump openly cheers protesters overseas, urges them to take over institutions, promises help is on the way when it serves his interests abroad. But here at home, protesters get kettled, beaten, arrested, shot. Americans exercising their rights are labeled threats. Layer on the talking heads blaming the dead woman for her own killing. preventable. Her own hand. Watch how quickly sympathy evaporates once the state needs it gone. Watch how fast lethal force gets normalized, as long as the badge is federal and the narrative is locked down. And when members of Congress try to ask the most basic questions, why the masks, who authorized them, why anonymity is expanding while violence escalates, they're stonewalled, deflected, gaslit, just like we saw in that House Judiciary Exchange. Accountability is framed as inflammatory. Asking questions is treated like sabotage. This is what it looks like when MAGA is circling the wagons. Because here's the truth they're desperate to outrun. A government willing to excuse the killing of an American citizen, smear the dead, pay for propaganda, suppress oversight, and criminalize dissent isn't just afraid of protests. It's afraid of what comes out when the walls crack. And yes, that fear leads straight to the Epstein files. Because once the public starts demanding real transparency, not just about ICE, not just about one killing, but about who's being protected, about being silenced and how long powerful men have escaped consequences, the entire structure collapses. That's what this is about. Not safety, not order, not law. It's about protecting Donald Trump and anyone else whose names becomes radioactive once the truth is no longer controllable. Masks stay on, files stay buried, victims get blamed, and anyone who asks why is treated like the enemy. And that's unacceptable. And that's also a fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.